What if healing trauma didn't mean reliving it, but gently transforming it? What if the key wasn't in the mind, but in the body? Dr. Peter Levine, world-renowned trauma expert, shares a powerful story of imaginary conversations with Einstein, childhood moments of love, and how deep wounds can become gateways to healing. This isn't just theory, it's transformation, and it's possible for all of us. If you've ever felt unheard, unseen, or like the wounds from your past still hold you back, you're not alone. This space is for you. Here, we heal, we grow, and we rediscover who we truly are. Beyond the pain, beyond the past. And if you're ready to step into your healing journey and finally embrace your authentic self, hit that subscribe button. Because your inner child matters, and together, we can rewrite your story. And before we dive in, I want you to affirm this. Drop "I am healing" in the comments. Let's remind ourselves, and each other.
So there's a thing called active imagination, and Carl Jung talked about this. And supposedly children have this ability, but then we lose it. And I disagree. I think we lose it when we are not in contact. We don't enhance it. So anyhow, he introduced himself as Professor Einstein, and he said, "I think you have some questions you'd like to ask me." Now again, I knew, the science part of me knew that that wasn't real, that he wasn't actually real, but that this was an image which was in many ways realer than real. Many of these conversations went on, especially having to do with the traumas that get passed on from our ancestors, but also the great wisdom and knowing that's passed on through our ancestors. So again, he showed me, got me on the right track for understanding how these energy patterns continue through, and they go forward in time, but also backwards in time. And of course, Professor was an expert on time and time-space moving in all directions, not just the head. So anyhow, I sadly came in one evening, and he didn't show up for that time, and I knew that that acquaintance was going to be gone. I realized in somatic experiencing, we don't go right to the person's trauma. We find something that has a relative similar body experience, but that's a positive one. And so what came to me when I started meditating on that is when I was about 4 or 5, it was my birthday. And in the middle of the night, my parents came in and they laid tracks underneath my bed, out into the bedroom, back again underneath the bed, and in an oval. And when I woke up, the train was going around in that oval. And I was just filled with excitement. I literally jumped out of bed. I ran to the transformer where I can control the speed and make the horn go toot-toot. And I knew in that moment that I was cared for, that I was loved. And if we, even once in our life, feel loved by somebody, and it doesn't have to be a parent, it means we're going to make it. And so I worked with this image before we came to deal with that. And again, talking about Chiron, I realized that this was time for me to really address that trauma, my trauma. And I asked one of my students to sit with me and to guide me into working through this, which she did, and she did beautifully. She did beautifully. And so, again, the good news is that trauma doesn't have to be a life sentence. That given the right tools, trauma doesn't have to rule. And again, that's what I wanted to share with my reader, to share that they have also the capacity to heal their own wounds and to tell their own story. And so this was my motivation for finally talking to a publisher that I knew. And I said, "I'd like you to look at this manuscript." And he called me back the next day, and he said, "Wow, I think this," at first I thought there's no way this could help people. But then I realized it could really, really help.
Well,
people.
everybody has some form of trauma,
Of
some
course.
form of psychosocial injury.
That's right. And again, knowing that they could do their own healing and how to support them to do their own work, their own healing. First of all, trauma is trauma, no matter what happened, how it happened. It's not somebody has a worse trauma or a better trauma. Trauma is trauma. Like I said at the beginning, I gave an example of something that wouldn't be considered trauma as PTSD, but did have a lasting effect on me. And so I think that the thing I would leave people, again, with this idea that trauma is not something that it's not something that just what happened to us, per se, but rather it's what's happened to us in the absence of a present, empathetic, caring other. And that's really important. And that person was that for me when we excavated the trauma of the violence and the rape. That we, in somatic experiencing, we guide people very gently, never crashing into the trauma. There are methods that do that have people relive their traumas over and over again. And I am definitely not a fan of that kind of prolonged exposure. I think it can be re-traumatizing. It's important what I call titrating. We just touch into these sensations, and then so they don't have this overwhelming power over us. So I hope that kind of answers your question a bit. It's really to know not to smash the people into their trauma, that there are ways that trauma can be healed and can be healed without being overwhelming again. Because to the nervous system, being overwhelmed really is not that different than when we were traumatized. The nervous system sees that as the same kind of thing. So again, that was, I think, what I would say, that the tools for trauma, when we have those tools, we can really come to peace with so many of the things that have happened to us in our lives. So anyhow, again, I think the idea that trauma is something that happens in the body, it affects the mind, it affects the psyche, but it's something that happens initially in the body. And that's where you have to go to resolve the trauma, to transform our traumatic experiences. And usually when people transform these experiences, they're more connected to themselves, and they're more empathic, both to themselves and to others, and more kind to others. And I think part of it is when you realize what trauma can do, you want to help other people not become traumatized. I have several really wonderful godchildren, and one of my godchildren had to go to the emergency room. I don't remember if he swallowed a marble or smashed his head or something. And so I went there with him and I did some trauma first aid, and he was fine. And then his mother told me sometime after that, that he saw a kid being bullied in the school, and he went up to the bullies and said, "This is not okay." When children get those capacities, those tools, then they carry them through for the rest of their life. And so why not start early? Because I've worked with people, for example, that have had trauma from birth or even before birth. And so when they learn that they don't have to be traumatized, then that gives them this capacity to help others and to help themselves so that they're not traumatized. What I noticed, they had diagnosed them with everything: depression, anxiety, PTSD, Tourette syndrome, because they would see this, but you don't develop Tourette syndrome overnight. And his body was contracting to protect himself as much as it was possible. And so when I just worked with him with this movement here, but just very slightly titrated, just move a little bit here into the movement, then move back, then move in a little bit more, moving back. And he felt waves of warmth. And he said afterwards that that was the first time that he felt okay. Because and the next day 80% of those convulsions were gone.
Wow.
And you just see him, how he comes into himself, and then how he brings that gift of compassion to his wife and then the child they had together. Give me a place to put my lever, and I'll change the world. And I think the body is that fulcrum that can really move the world of trauma into healing and into transformation.
Healing doesn't have to be loud or dramatic. It can be gentle, patient, and deeply personal. As Dr. Peter showed us, trauma may shape us, but it doesn't have to define us. Your body holds the story, but it also holds the wisdom to heal. Even one moment of being truly seen, truly loved, can be enough to spark that transformation. So if you're on this path, take heart. The tools are out there, and the journey, while not always easy, is absolutely worth it. Healing takes time, and you don't have to do it alone. If this message resonated with you, know that your journey matters. Be gentle with yourself, keep exploring, and surround yourself with support. If you haven't yet, subscribe and join this community. We're in this together. And before you go, comment, "I am healing," to affirm your growth. You are seen, you are valued, and you are not alone. Healing